Hello and welcome to Starcast from Planet Waves. I'm Eric Francis Coppolino, author of the Planet Waves horoscope and a few other things, and I'm here with the edition of the Thursday podcast accompanying the weekly horoscope and a brief article that are on the page below. If you're on Substack, if you're listening on one of the other podcasting platforms, you can check out the full version of the Planet Waves thing, either at planetwaves.substack.com or planetwaves.net. Anyway, thanks for joining me. It is good to be with you here in yet another moment of, wow, what's going on? And what is next? We've been through our first week of this Mercury retrograde, and what a week it was. The longest government shutdown in U.S. history ended. That's kind of a little bit not very Mercury retrograde, but it does tell you the diversity of effects that you can have under this influence that are not always about things going wrong, but I'm still suspicious of this whole government shutdown and what motivated it and how well everybody played their part in, perpetuating this drama that went on for 43 days. Finally got the House of Representatives back into Washington, D.C. to sort of do something. And I don't know, it's all really quite over the top. And then I've included a couple of links below to some outcomes related to my discussion of 11/11, which I initiated back in September. And I said, well, there's something up either on the 11th or at about 10 in the morning on the 12th. And it turned out that about 9 o'clock in the morning on the 12th, there was a big, first of all, release of several of the Trump-Epstein emails by the Democrats in Congress. And then a little bit later that day, a dump of 20,000 emails by the Republicans. You may have noticed that I am not into this Epstein thing, but I will now continue my coverage on Friday on Planet Waves and FM. Will not take any more time here today. Mostly I am going to talk about the astrology of the next few days into the new moon, and then I'm going to tell you a bit about what I'm doing with the annual edition, where I continue to be deep into the writing of, and where I will be deep into the writing of till the thing actually comes out, probably the last week of December. And it'll take that long. These are to get the result of a clearly expressed and easy to follow reading takes a lot of work, because I have to take what is complicated on one level and see through that complication and then express it in a way that is useful, right? Understandable. This is the thing that we don't really have. Oh, we don't really have very much of this. The contemporary internet, useful, understandable. What these things left the room, but when they left the room, they came into my room. All right, so it is now. It's now. I'm recording Thursday, the 13th, about 2:30, and last night. The moon went into Virgo. That was at 6:51, approximately 6:51 p.m. on Thursday. All times, by the way, are Wednesday. It even says it on my date together. So we now have the moon in Virgo. A bit of a challenging moon. The moon wants to be emotionally expressive. Virgo is generally trying to fit everything through its mind, but what Virgo really wants is to squish its toes in the mud and work in the garden and express everything through a physical form. And so, there's a little bit of a contradiction with the moon in Virgo, but still we get these two delightfully feminine concepts aligned with one another. The goddess of the hunt in the sign of the Virgin, and the moon, named for Artemis, is also the protector of young women. Okay, so the moon stays in Virgo. I'm going to go through the lunar signs cleared through to the new moon and then the sun entering Sagittarius next week. So then moon enters Libra Saturday at about 4:43 a.m., 4:43:28. In entering Libra, we pick up all of the stuff on the cardinal cross. So let me rewind a second. During the day on Saturday, ahead of the moon getting into Libra, so let's talk about that for a second. We have the moon passing through late Virgo, at which time it will make an opposition to Saturn. That can have a little bit of a depressing quality to it. Just let it pass right through you, and then the moon will oppose Neptune, which is only 4 degrees away. So it's kind of like early in the morning, Eastern time, moon opposite Saturn, and then in the afternoon, moon opposite Neptune. So a completely opposite feeling of like kind of a dreamy, floaty feeling when you put the moon and Neptune together. The moon and Neptune can feel a lot like one another depending on the other conditions around them. And that will give way to the moon in Libra, again, 4:43 in the afternoon on Saturday. And so when the moon goes into Libra, then we start to pick up all of the activity in the cardinal signs. And this is all of this stuff, for one thing, that's clustered in now, mid Capricorn. So that will be kind of overnight and into Sunday. And by that, I mean the Family Hunger Games group. I have been talking about this now for a year and a half. And this really is, this cluster of planets in early Capricorn is pretty deep. And it's kind of, you don't necessarily notice it. Nobody's really talking about it. I've only seen one YouTube of anyone talking about this grouping in early Capricorn, all of them minor planets that are not generally, they're not going to come up on most discussions, podcasts, articles, whatever. Largely, the minor planets are back to being considered driveway shale by a lot of people in the ancient astrology movement that kind of pushed the minor planets out of the way in the late 1990s and early 2020 noughts. Anyway, they're there, and so this is cautionary in that the turbulence, it's a little turbulent. I mean, this is a turbulent grouping of planets. It's Pholus, which involves multi-generational issues and alcohol, and Quaoar, which is about tribalism. I've had some new thoughts on that, inspired by a couple of people who kind of tossed their penny into the wishing well. And so the matter here involves the nature of disagreements in relationships. And the first thing to remember is we're talking moon square this group of minor planets. And what tends to happen with squares is they can be aggressive. They want action of some kind, but they're usually about internal dynamics that are then projected into the environment. And the environment for humans is into the relationship environment. So this is something to be cautious of and to keep hold of that process to the best extent that you can. And I do recognize that it's very difficult often to sort out various forms of projection, and it's possible to take a view that everything we perceive is a sort of projection. Course in Miracles says quite plainly that projection makes perception, that everything that we perceive is a form of projection. And that'll drive you crazy after a while when you start to say, well, yeah, but what's the difference between me and everything around me? But that is one of the fundamental questions of existence. In any event, this will all be made worse by alcohol. And so by worse, I mean more mired, more difficult to really assess what's going on and to understand what it is that you're feeling. But I think that when we're talking about any square aspect, any potential to project the content of that square aspect into relationships, the first thing to understand is, and to seek some understanding of, is where am I coming from? What is, where am I at? What are my needs? What are my feelings? What am I angry about? I think there's a lot of anger that's going unexpressed in the world right now. Various forms of woke and political correctness have basically set up a situation where only certain kinds of anger are acceptable. And by certain kinds of anger, I mean about certain issues and projected onto certain people, but not onto other people. So there are the people that we're allowed to be angry about and angry at, and then there are the people that we're not allowed to be angry at. This is all evasive of what it is that you may actually be feeling, should that thing be anger. Now, why do I say anger? Well, we've got this hot Mercury and hot Mars going on right now. There's been this conjunction of Mercury and Mars that's still pretty close on Saturday, even though it is separating. It is there, and it is, anger in the style of Mars and Sagittarius can be righteous. It cannot see even the possibility of other ideas existing, much less having validity. And Mercury retrograde in very close by in Sagittarius is cautionary of overgeneralization. It is cautionary of, again, thinking that your beliefs are the only ones that are correct when I think this is the time to be stepping out of belief. I mean, belief is very flimsy and usually just kind of based on preference more than anything. And also, there's a way of either with Mercury retrograde in Sag, either overlooking the details or doing what I call abusing inductive logic. Inductive logic is a form, it's not really logic actually, and it's a form of pattern recognition. It's like, when that happens, then that happens. And then when that happens again, that happens again. Like riding a motorcycle and you hit a bump and the headlight goes out. You hit another bump and the headlight goes out. You hit a third bump and the headlight goes out. So you can at least assume that there may be a connection between hitting the bump and the headlight going out. The problem we have now is that when one thing, anything, it's associated with any other thing, usually there's the assumption that, oh, that's what that is. No need to investigate that. No need to prove that in any way. And therefore turning a limited observation into a conclusion. That's what I call the abuse of inductive logic. So it's selective. And this too, Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius. Finally, Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius. What is actually true for me? This would be a quiet inquiry rather than proselytizing, preaching, the Ten Commandments. And Sag always is going to have that philosophical, spiritual inflection to it. So this could get picked up in discussions. And I would say that I suspect right now that relationships are pretty fraught. And that they are fraught because there's such a long list of things that can't be talked about, and there is such a long list of ungrounded expectations that people have been conditioned to have, and therefore there is a lot that is not being said. That which is not being said tends to build up, and that which builds up tends to kind of lend itself to the formation of chaos. Okay, that's my rant on the moon in Libra. That goes Saturday through Monday afternoon. Monday afternoon, 4:44. Interesting how at 4:43 a.m., a couple of days earlier, the a.m., the moon entered Libra. Now 4:44 p.m. on Monday the 17th. I'm just going to make sure that I check this before I'm going to make sure that Monday really is the 17th. It is. The moon enters Scorpio, and that is entering a new phase. So it's extreme balsamic. It is at the end of the lunar cycle, And for the next few days, the moon is going to be closing in on the sun. Looks like the moon is slowing down. Moon moves different rates through the zodiac, and you can pretty much, just looking at the charts, you can tell how fast the moon's going. So anyway, the moon, got a slow moon, which means the moon is far from the Earth, relatively speaking. And then Monday, again, 4:44, moon Scorpio, and then the next thing up will be a moon conjunction to Venus. Venus is probably a little too close to the sun to see this at sunrise, but if you catch it this weekend, if you're up about an hour before sunrise, you'll see the moon Venus conjunction rise. Venus may be bright enough. I'm not an expert on like how close Venus is to the sun, how close it can be, and you can still see it, but it's getting close. The moon is Venus rather is looking like about 12 degrees away from the sun. Anyway, so then the new moon happens. Mercury is retrograding back towards Scorpio. And then by the new moon on Thursday, that's November 20th at 1:47 a.m. Eastern Time, we have a triple conjunction of moon, sun, and retrograde Mercury. This is interesting. So during every Mercury retrograde, there's a conjunction of of Mercury and the sun. So the physical nature of Mercury retrograde is Mercury passing between the Earth and the sun. So finally it gets there after about 10 days of the retrograde. Only this time, when Mercury gets exactly between the moon and the sun, between the Earth and the sun, the moon is right there. So we get this quadruple alignment of Earth, Mercury, moon, sun. It's actually a 4-point conjunction. It's right there. So this is an exciting new moon, and a little bit strange, and it's got a lot going on in terms of aspect patterns. For example, it's part of a grand trine in the water signs. So it's the moon, Mercury, sun is anaretic. It's in the next to last degree. So it is true. It is, but it's not, ain't no void of course in any way. So the grand water trine consists of moon, sun, Mercury in Scorpio, and then grand trine means in the same element, Jupiter in Cancer, and then also Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. This is a pretty exciting new moon. New moon, it tends to be quiet. This is not going to be a kind of a quiet new moon. And to make matters interesting, we've got Jupiter, though retrograde in fairly late Cancer, making fancy aspects. We'll get to that when I'm done with the water trine. And then we have then it's going to be trine Saturn, but trine Neptune in the last degree of Pisces and opposite Uranus in the last degree of Taurus. This, by the way, is kind of one of the last hurrahs of all of these planets in feminine signs. And I have to say, I'm a little bit concerned about this because the energy of the world has become very airy and fiery and is not very earthy and watery. And I'm not talking about the difference between men and women. I'm talking about something that is affecting everyone and the vibe of the culture that we live in and what we expect to be normal and the condition of the forest that would either facilitate the growth of new plants or facilitate a forest fire. And we're moving into forest fire territory when we have pretty much everything moving out of feminine signs. For example, by early next year, Neptune and Saturn will be in Aries, leaving Pisces, and then at some point in the spring, Uranus will move from Taurus into Gemini. That's a shift from a feminine sign to a masculine sign. By the summer, Jupiter will move from Cancer into Leo, and Pluto has already moved from Capricorn into Aquarius. And so this is going to be like you have to ground the yin energy yourself. It's not going to be a lot of just generally available in the atmosphere, in the environment. And what tends to happen in culture these days, which is largely digital culture, is when anything masculine happens, men are blamed. But there is no way right now to say that the men are acting in ways more masculine than the women. The women are doing a fantastic job of being absolutely masculine in their approach, in their thought process, and in their, their type of planning and the mentalization and the drive, aspiration, and ambition and all of that. And, our culture is losing contact increasingly, like very quickly, with all things feminine. And it doesn't, just because you're into yoga doesn't mean you're in your body. It might help, but it's no assurance. And just because you're a woman doesn't mean you're feminine. It doesn't mean you're tapping into all of the things that make you a woman, right? And just because you're a man, it doesn't mean that, you're all these caricatures that men are made out to be in the world right now. So this is, you got to bring your own and, conjure your own. I mean, for me, spending as much time in the kitchen as I can is really helpful. If I could just pick up and do something else, I would have some kind of a gig where I was in the kitchen like 3/4 of the time and music studio the rest of the time. All right. So speaking of things going from feminine to masculine signs, then we have the sun entering Sagittarius on the 21st. That is on Friday, and we enter the very strange and mystical time in the year when the sun lines up with the great attractor and the galactic center. I will have more to say about that on next week's Starcast. Okay, as far as what I'm doing with the annual edition, so I've written this project every year since I started in December of 1998. It was like an extended monthly horoscope. It was called The Year You Don't Forget. So it's a long monthly horoscope with a title, but it was directed at the year, at the forthcoming whatever quote unquote a year is. Convenient, we're talking civil calendar here, but whatever. So, and over the years, the annual grew into something that was, moderate article length for each sign. And then about 10 years ago, I started getting into basically these chapter length readings for the signs. Now, from one year to another, the astrology is like similar with variations. And so it's a question of emphasis. So the 2025 annual had a lot to say about these outer planets changing signs, and they're still changing signs, most of them anyway, in 2026. So this presents a creative challenge, which is what have I got that is new to say, that is taking into account the way the astrology is developing and also the way the world is developing, and then my observations about people adapting to the world. So astrology is all about working with your environment and not against your environment. The bottom line on my assessment of what astrology is that it is, the word is 3 times in one sentence phrase, a form of environmental study. Astrology is studying what is normally invisible and taken for granted and seen to have no meaning, even if it is noticed, and then bringing that into a place where it is observable and experienceable and noticeable and placed in context, meaningful. And so my job here with this is, and I sit down in earnest every day and do a little more, and one by one these readings take shape, and I never really know how I'm going to do it because they're 12 completely different things, and they are longer than any Planet Waves article, and anyway, it's happening. The 2 readings that have kind of jumped to life, the first with the Cancer and the Capricorn reading. No concept of why that is, but they have those 2 are almost done, and it looks like I will be able to have something quite nice for you by the end of the year. And we're offering this as Inner Light, and that's the written. And then the audio is called Inner Peace, and I've been looking for a concept of how to do the audio. We'll see if I've got a concept. I'm not going to say what it is, but we'll see if I'm gutsy enough to do it this way. And we will see. And I'm always up for a challenge, and it involves the way that I'm going to use the music with the astrology and how I'm going to spin those readings. But really, it's about the interplay of the music and the words. And that's called Inner Peace. They're both available together. You can go to a place called the Astrology Boutique and see what we've got in preview so far. I'll be doing more preview letters soon, and a podcast this weekend about why these readings are so special and so helpful. All right, signing off from the Harshaw House, I'm Eric Francis Coppolino. Lots of love, and bye for now.